Hello, my name is Tim, and I am here with Jojo Yeboah from Big Talks Weekly, and this is UTS Startups Confessions.
Thank you.
Jojo, thanks for coming on board.
Thank you.
Tell us about your business, Big Talks Weekly. What is it?
Sure. So Big Talks Weekly is a teaching and learning platform that teaches the social science syllabus through contemporary news events. So in effect, it's like a live textbook. So the theory is actually correlated with what's happening in the real world, and it's all digitized in one place on the platform, which is really cool.
And so this platform takes the form of like a website?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, right, okay. And how do people experience that? Like, can people just go and look at this website themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone can log on to Big Talks Weekly. And what we do is we upload a few articles a day that are directly correlated with the social science syllabus. So that's economics, business, legal studies. So the whole idea is that, things that in school require contemporary knowledge is really what we focus on.
Yeah, cool. All right. So what's the website URL? Is it bigtalksweekly.com?
Yeah, so it's bigtalks.com.
Bigtalks.com.
Yeah, bigtalks.com.au.
Yeah, cool. All right. So you've got your phones, folks at home, bring it up, you can have a look at it. And so you take stories from the news.
Yes.
And then you contextualize them around the subjects that people in years 9, 10, 11, 12-ish would be taking.
Absolutely.
Right? So they can see this news event relates to this particular subject that I might be studying, or this concept. You're
so right. So the whole idea is to actually teach in context. So it's contextual teaching and contextual learning. I was talking to Tim before, and we were talking about the disparity between what's happening in the real world and what's happening in the classroom. And I made an example, and I'll share it with you guys as well. It's interest rates, for example, shouldn't just be a theory that's studied in classroom, because at the end of the day, it's happening around us. So what we do is actually, for example, with the interest rates, we take the news around interest rates and use that as a kind of teaching material. So we teach the theory of interest rates around what's actually happening in the real world.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. I remember, amazingly, I can still remember when I was in school, despite the fact that it was a very long time ago. And I can remember, for example, studying civics, right? And not really caring. I didn't start caring until civics impacted me through elections and politicians, and all of a sudden policy, and how amazing it would have been if back then I actually had some sense of what it means in the real world.
Yeah.
It's a really cool product. Those of you who have access to your phones, check it out. So Jojo, talk about your journey and how you landed on this project, Big Talks Weekly.
Sure. So how I landed on Big Talks Weekly it's been a really long journey.
Sure.
And it's been long in the sense of it's actually kind of an amalgamation and kind of a collection of experiences that led me to land on this idea. And I'll start by saying, firstly, I was born in Ghana in West Africa. So that's where I grew up till I was about 10. And then I migrated to Australia. And I think even at that young age, one thing that stood out really clearly to me was that in Ghana, when you don't have an education and when you do have an education, things look very different. Life outcomes look really, really different. Now, what then happened was, I did high school here, and it became really apparent to me that I wasn't really understanding what was going on. And I tried really hard. I tried really, really hard because I recognized that opportunity that I had. So moving on from high school, I had the opportunity to work at the Business Council and at places like Deloitte, where I got to see what things were like in the real world, what I was being taught in the classroom versus what it actually was like in application. And And two things I realized: first of all, it doesn't need to be this hard, and second of all, is that they're the same thing. Right, so that was the journey. There's understanding this disparity and really being disgruntled with the fact that, my learning wasn't relevant and engaging for me, and then going into the real world and figuring out, actually, this really doesn't need to be that hard. Yeah. Then the idea came to me, let's have this platform that actually puts them together exactly where they should be. To be fair, the theory and the reality should not be two different things. We are talking about the same thing. So that's how this idea grew.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, we often at UTS Startups, we're very much focused on uncovering sort of that unique blend of experiences, connections, capabilities that enable entrepreneurs to do amazing things through entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And, your story is obviously, it's increasingly common in Australia. Yeah. We're both immigrants, if you couldn't tell. Mm-hmm. But your story is particularly, it probably presented a few more challenges, I'd say, than my story did. Yeah. I got to grow up in tremendous privilege.
Sure.
Talk about how your experience as an immigrant coming from West Africa, what skills, what capabilities did that give you that may be unique to you in terms of, being successful in entrepreneurship?
Sure. I think two things, resilience and the ability to adapt is immediately what I think of. And that's been embedded in my life story right from the start. It's the things I haven't really had a choice on, right? I had to leave kind of everything back in Ghana and migrate here. And I was forced to adapt as well. And I think those are really important tools in entrepreneurship or in life in general, right? Is in this world right now, we have to adapt and we have to be resilient. You get knocked back and you get praised and you get encouraged, and it's this kind of up and down journey, but you can't lose yourself through that. And I think that's really what the resilience is and what the adaptation really brings.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, you learn not to take no for an answer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. So in your work with Big Talks Weekly, you're working with school age, maybe not directly with school age kids, but you're providing a service that benefits them.
Absolutely.
But I imagine your primary stakeholder is probably the teachers.
Yeah.
And I imagine you would have by this point interacted with quite a few teachers in the public school system, in the private school system. What's something that folks at home who maybe have never been a teacher or don't know a teacher, what's something that you've learned as part of this journey that they might find surprising?
That's a really good question, actually. One thing in dealing with teachers is, and I found this really interesting. I found this really, really interesting because I was at Deloitte prior to this. I was a management consultant, and through this whole journey, I came up with this idea and, went to teachers, and some teachers were right on board. And, in my head, I was thinking, wait, I'm creating something that saves you time and makes your life way easier. Why wouldn't you just say yes, right? 10 out of 10 times. That was my thinking. Now, this happened some of the times, and this is what surprised me is other times I found that teachers really do care, first of all, and because of that, they're actually protective of their processes and how they do things. So although I had this idea of a solution, it wasn't necessarily accepted immediately by all teachers. Now that's changing a lot, obviously, having proven the product, having a school actually using it, etc. But that was the biggest surprise is why wouldn't you just take it?
Well, how about this? Did you find in your conversations, your early conversations with teachers, did you at least agree that there was a problem?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. There's no denying.
And did you agree on what that problem was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are so many problems within that same sphere. So it becomes so undeniable. But I think to the point I'm making is that it was this protectiveness and this care over process and how things are done, and they didn't want to disrupt that. They really, especially in Year 12, teachers actually plan this whole HSC journey, right? And then here I am with this thing that's going to help them, but you know, I suppose to them it's kind of like, if there are any hiccups, that's a hiccup to their pre-existing plan as well.
Right.
So I had to learn that.
Yeah. Interesting. And where you're running into resistance from, well, where you have run into resistance from teachers, is it? I mean, is there like some peak body that tells teachers, hey, this is how you should teach these things in the HSC? Or is it individual teachers who are all trying to chase after some solution to help their students?
It's a really, really good question. So we have the curriculum and we have a syllabus for each subject. So I'll use legal studies, for example. Legal studies has a syllabus and it's a list of, let's say, 300 key points that people have to, that teachers have to teach and students have to study. Now, how they teach that is completely up to them. Right? How they teach that is completely up to them. So I think to your point, it's really kind of open for them, for them to explore.
Sounds like a great opportunity for efficiency. For someone to find, you know, a better than everyone else's answer type solution and spread it around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any figures on how broadly used Big Talks Weekly is?
Yeah, sure. So Big Talks Weekly over the last, so first of all, Big Talks Weekly has only been implemented in one school in terms of a paying customer. And it's now that we're starting to see traction in terms of, you know, other schools inviting Big Talks Weekly in to talk, etc. So within Joey's, over the last month, we've had 100% engagement rate. So everybody who's signed on has used it, and about 50% of them are continuous. So they just keep coming back. Now, this is really interesting and really important in terms of validation and really understanding the use of the product, because none of these students have to rock up. Like, they just don't, right? And they just keep coming back because the information is directly correlated with their syllabus points, and they're using this in preparation for assignments, etc. So that's what I hear.
Students are validating the value.
The students are validating the value.
It's not just the teacher saying you have to do this.
No. Students are going there on their own accord. I look at the data sometimes, and even on a Saturday, you'd have like a few.
Kids reading the news. Oh, that'd be pretty surprising. Okay, cool. So, all right, this sounds really cool. Like, you've identified, you know, this really pressing need, both for teachers in terms of collecting, you know, relevant materials to teach to the curriculum, but also for students in terms of finding ways to engage them and make them excited about actually learning the subject matter.
Absolutely.
But like, where does something like where do these observations go from here? Like, you've got your platform, and you've got some success with it, you've got some initial traction, but like, where do you take that?
So it's all about scaling, and it's all about making this available to everybody, right? So my initial drive for this was, I always say, it was for the kid in the back of the class who didn't really get it, and that was me to some extent. I managed to kind of break through that and, you know, come to UTS and kind of progress myself forward. But it's really about making this accessible to everybody.
Right.
So we validated the product, and we'll continue to validate it. We've seen traction within one school, and now we're really starting to see interest from other schools. So yeah, that's where we'll be going with it.
So I take it you probably have some interest in the social sciences, some personal interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how are you going to help kids who are learning science?
This is a really good point. So first of all, it's about focusing. It's about focusing on validating, right? So my take on the matter is that we need to understand how students are reacting to this and the utility to them, regardless of subject. Just understand the kind of utility of the fundamentals that are being presented here. Once we have that, I think the sky's the limit. Right. We can apply this to science. We can apply this to absolutely anything, even mathematics. I can't say I've thought deeply about the whole mathematics scenario, but the possibilities are definitely infinite.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And obviously this is UTS, like we're University of Technology, Sydney.
That's true.
Startups, we very much focus on technology-enabled startups. The work that you're doing is very, say, editorial, curating content.
Absolutely.
I imagine you probably have a small army of people helping you filter through everything that's happening in the news.
That's true.
Like, what role do you see technology playing in addressing this kind of solution going into the future?
I see technology playing a huge role. So, by the way, when I started Big Talks Weekly, ChatGPT didn't exist, right? And
yeah, it was like a whole other era. We need to like have a vision in time, like pre-ChatGPT.
Yeah, right.
ChatGPT.
100%. I feel like it's bragging rights now. It's like I was there before.
Exactly. I used to work.
Yeah. And I look back now and I think I'm crazy. Like, how did I think I was going to generate all this content without the support of something like ChatGPT? And again, it comes down to the motivation and the drive within me to actually just solve a problem, right? And I knew that, yeah, it was probably going to be hands-on, but I cared about the problem and I was going to solve it either way. That was kind of my mentality. With the role that I see the ChatGPT or technology playing broadly is massive. It's massive in the sense that we need to make the learning process easier. We need to make things more engaging and we need to make things more relevant. And with technology, we can do that. One way that we're using ChatGPT right now is really using it to present the information in a way that, first of all, is really quick to generate, obviously, but presented in a way that's also adaptive to how students learn.
Sure.
So you don't print a textbook, for example, and then hope it all goes well. Is you write something, you go talk to the students, and then get their feedback, and then even through Google Analytics and how they interact with things, you can actually adapt and make things more adjusted for their needs as well. So that's the role technology can play. It can make things move quicker. It can make things more personalized.
Yeah.
Just make learning more relevant.
Yeah, amazing. All right. So look, you've got a little bit of a captive audience here, both in the room and at home. What can we collectively do to help you on your mission?
I think importantly for Big Talks Weekly, if you do know anybody that would benefit from Big Talks Weekly, as I mentioned, is for the HISI syllabus. So we call it, social science and commerce as well. Please, it's bigtalks.com.au. And if there's anybody that would also like to give feedback, or anybody that would actually have some really useful feedback in this space, that'd be really appreciated as well. So the email would be info@bigtalks.com.au.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story with us, Jojo.
Appreciate it.
It's an amazing thing that you're working on, something that I certainly wish existed when I was in school to help me care about some of the subjects that didn't matter to me.
Me too.
Yeah, of course. So we're gonna cut the camera off here and transition to an off-camera Q&A.
Sure.
We have these talks every Friday here at UTS Startups in Central. We have amazing drinks, we've got amazing company, we've got great pizza, and it's always a good time. So next time, make sure you register and come join us in person. And with that, I bid you online people goodbye. Yeah, we can clap.